Thank you. I declare the council meeting on Tuesday the 28th of April 2026 open at 5:30 p.m. and would like to advise that the meeting is being live streamed in accordance with the council meeting's live streaming, recording and electronic attendance policy. By being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the city's live streaming and recording and subsequently publishing their voice on the city's website. I'd like to start the meeting with some words prepared by our local Aboriginal elder, George Wally. I want to acknowledge the presence of people over a long time, with firstly the Binjarab Noongar people who continue to have an ongoing connection to this land. They've been here for over 50,000 years. This place, Mandurah or Mandurah, acknowledges a beautiful name full of intent of people living here and others visiting here. That intent gives us an idea of the ancestral land usage over that long period. Mandurah, the gathering place, is unique because even today we still gather here in the most beautiful place for many important reasons. Let us embrace the notion of people being in this space as we continue to move forward as one community. Apologies for tonight's meeting. Councillor Rogers. Important notice. Members of the public are advised that any decision made at the meeting tonight can be revoked in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995. Therefore, members of the public should not rely on any decisions until formal notification has been received in writing by the council. Answers to questions taken on notice. Please refer to the screen. I would like to also tonight amend the standing orders. Council's request to resolve to suspend the operation of the following provisions of the City of Mandurah Standing Orders, Local Law 2016, for the duration of this meeting to ensure that Councillor Knight can follow and participate in them as the meeting progresses. Councillor Knight, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Also, Standing Order 7.2, members to occupy own seats while present in meeting, relevant only for elected members who are in chamber. Agree under Standing Orders 8.11 and 12.2 that instead of requiring a show of hands, a vote will be conducted by exception with the presiding member calling for all members against the motion. If no response is received, the motion will be declared and carried and minuted accordingly. I'd just like to reiterate Standing Order 7.3 for members to advise myself if they are leaving or entering the room. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder? Councillor Wilkins moves, Deputy Mayor Smith seconder. I put this to the vote. Anyone voting against? I declare that carried. We now move into public question time. Please ensure that your questions relate to the ordinary business of the city, the function of council or the purpose of this meeting. Please note this is an opportunity to ask questions only. No additional statements or arguments will be permitted. During public question time, members of the public are given the opportunity to ask a question of council. Council will allocate 15 minutes for public question time. Once this time has been exhausted, I may move a motion to extend public question time for a further 15 minutes. The City is committed to ensuring fair and equitable access to public question time in accordance with council policy. Each member of the public who wishes to ask a question may ask up to 3 questions. Public question time must be conducted in accordance with the City of Mandurah Standing Orders. Questions must not reflect adversely on the integrity of the City of Mandurah, including elected members, city officers or other parties. When called forward to ask your question, please begin by stating your name. The City will make every attempt to provide an answer. Where this is not possible, your questions will be taken on notice and a written response will be provided once the necessary research has been undertaken. This response will be included in the next council agenda. I now move to public question time at 5:35 p.m. I would like to invite Gary Buckland.
Gary Buckland.
Thank you, Gary.
Question of the problems we're having with stormwater within the city, especially Rockford Street, Anstruther Road and surrounding areas. I've actually taken your advice. I know this doesn't sound like a question at the moment, but I've taken your advice. I've spoken to Matthew. I'm just wondering where that has progressed to this point and any costing been done on it as yet.
Thank you so much, Gary. I'll refer that question to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, as per the outcome of my meeting with Mr Buckland, we're intending to provide a response to him and circulate that response within approximately the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, do you have subsequent questions?
The only major problem in that is that 2 weeks from now, another house might be flooded. Now, Matthew's not aware of this, but it has been stated at meetings.
Thank you, Gary. I'll kind of mould that into a question.
Well, I can, because the levels that are out there at the moment are allowing for the water to run back into a property that was originally connected to a stormwater situation.
Thank you, Gary. So in relation, can I refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment?
Through the Mayor, what I can say is that as part of our immediate response to the recent rain events, obviously there was urgent maintenance work undertaken, and we are on watch for any further storm events and will provide an appropriate and prompt response to any events. In terms of some of the longer standing issues, again, we intend to prepare a response for Mr Buckland, which we will circulate within the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you so much.
The other question I've got is relation to the barrier wall that's going over at Dolphin Pool and across in front of the hotels and stuff there. They have built the wall, but what's happened is that a lot of the limestone, the smaller pieces, have actually gone down and gone into the actual ocean. From the corner there where the wall starts to where it finishes, it's just littered in stones.
So your question is in relation...
Wild safety, people kicking their feet on the rocks. I've removed probably...
We've just got to keep it to questions, Gary. So if you'd like just to ask...
Well, the safety issue is, from council's point of view, the question is what are you going to do about it and who's going to pick up the cost?
Thank you so much, Gary. I really appreciate it. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, so the construction works are still underway. If there has been any bedding or rock spore materials that have emanated into the adjacent foreshore, the contractor will be required to clean those up as part of the construction works. Presently, my understanding is the site is fenced in terms of safety fencing, and there shouldn't be public access to those areas, but city officers will investigate that issue and the extent of any spore that has emanated from the site, ensure that is cleaned up as a matter of urgency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt.
And one more, just Doddy's Beach, suffering from huge amounts of erosion. Are we going to be installing some sort of barrier there? Because at the moment it's almost back to the car park.
I really appreciate your question, Gary. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
In accordance with the Northern Beaches CharMap Action Plan, there is presently planning and design work underway for coastal protection works at Doddy's Beach. The outcome of that, I would expect, will be known in the next few months, and certainly, again, that design work will be shared with both elected members and the community. Thank you.
Just one supplementary.
That was 3 questions, Gary.
Yeah, I know, but this is supplementary to that one.
Is it in relation, Gary? Are you able to email that question?
I can.
You can, because I believe, Matt, can I just ask that you follow up with Gary after this meeting to ensure that any other questions are received? And also, Gary, if it's possible, are you also able to send in any email, any photos?
I have been doing that with Matthew.
Amazing. Thank you. You're incredible. Thank you so much, Matt.
No, not incredible.
Cool. Question.
At question time, no, you can't.
I can ask a question now.
No. Are there any other questions? As there are no other questions, public question time, I will close public question time at 5:40 p.m. We now move into public statement time. Public statements shall not involve any language considered offensive, contain any statement reflecting adversely on the integrity of any elected member, officer or other, and exceed no longer than 2 minutes. Tonight, I would like to invite David Darn, who has a public statement.
David Darn.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you. I'm David Darn. I'm Commodore of Port Brevard Yacht Club. And on behalf of the Yacht Club, I'm asking that the Council reconsider the requirement and route of a proposed permanent path and associated works of the Dawesville Stage 2 development, as it crosses the front of our clubhouse and reduces our car parking space. There are many valid reasons why we feel the pathway would be detrimental to the club and also create safety hazards for the public. But I don't have time to go through them all tonight. These have been raised at previous meetings with the Council, who are well aware of our concerns. Instead, I ask you to consider why this path is needed and who will benefit. There has been a natural, unimpeded path along the foreshore since the club was formed 27 years ago. The local community are aware of it and use it regularly. So why do we need the expense of building a concrete path and fence, which will create several operational and safety issues, both for us and the public? It is supposed to be for the community, but the community are already using the existing path without any problems. On Friday, we started a petition asking the local community to support our opposition to the path. And in just 3 days, we have over 200 signatures. So I ask again, who is the path for?
Thank you so much, David, for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. And I will take that statement on notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
We now move into leave of absent requests. Are there any leave of absent requests from elected members? Petitions, there are also none. Presentations, there are none. Deputations, there are also none. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of March 2026. Is there a mover? Yes, Councillor Shoemaker, and a seconder, Councillor Green. I'll put that motion to vote. Any elected member against the motion? I declare that carried. We now move into a special part of our ordinary council meetings where we get to hear from elected members of the things that happen during the month. Obviously, lots happens in Mandurah, and this is a great opportunity to celebrate our community and what we're getting involved in as elected members. I would like to invite Councillor Burns to speak regarding a very special movie screening, Just a Farmer. Thank you, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Chair. And if you'll permit me, I've written this because this one was really important to me. So I'd like to briefly mention my attendance at the recent screening of Just a Farmer, hosted by Meadow Springs Residents Group in partnership with Barefoot Raw. It was a really well-run community event, and importantly, it focused on mental health challenges in regional and rural Australia, areas where people often face greater isolation, distance from services, and a culture that can make it harder to speak up. We know those challenges show up in the data with higher rates of mental health issues and suicide in regional communities, so raising awareness in a setting like this is genuinely important. What stood out to me on the night was the strength of the local community response. The Meadow Springs Residents Group should be commended for bringing people together and for directing the fundraising proceeds to Barefoot Raw, a grassroots group doing valuable work locally, particularly in creating a space where men can connect, talk and support each other. On a personal note, I'd highly recommend the film itself. It's a powerful watch. In fact, I was glad to be sitting in a darkened room. It is a very emotional film, and I'm unashamed to say I shed a tear, more than a tear or two, throughout. If people are interested in the story behind it, there's also a 30-minute Australian Story episode on the ABC, available free on YouTube, which goes into the background of how the film came together. It's well worth watching and genuinely inspiring story. Overall, it was a great example of a community-led engagement on an important issue, and I commend everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Burns. I now invite Councillor Wright.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I had the opportunity to go to Meadow Springs Primary School and Coodnup College last week for their Anzac services, and also know that there were a few other services that other elected members have also attended. I chatted with Councillor Schumacher prior. It was great to get to Meadow Springs. Their music teacher, I've forgotten her name unfortunately, but did a great job with the students in getting them to sing the national anthems of New Zealand in Maori and also the Australian national anthem. Quite impressive stuff, and overall the school spoke about 3 core values that they try to integrate into their school lives, which really coincide with the Anzac values of responsibility, having a clear direction. Obviously the Anzacs had a very clear direction. They were all responsible to one another and to themselves to make sure they followed that direction. And then they spoke a lot about unity on the day. And obviously the unity of the Anzacs and every Australian soldier that has served our country and every Australian that's served, whether it's in the battlefield of war. When we unify behind each other, it's Australians at their best. And it was really pleasing to hear 2 schools in Coodnup and also in Meadow Springs discuss those 3 different values. Also nice to see Councillor Wilkins and Councillor Green at the Coodnup ceremony. I'm always blown away when I get into local schools and see the respect that the students show. And fortunately or unfortunately for me, I walked into the Mayor's office after one of them and ended up doing a fun fact. 1 in 6 people in Mandurah is a student. But just goes to show the value of that community, and the school certainly had that on big display on their Anzac Day ceremonies, particularly with the ex-servicemen speaking. So really appreciated that opportunity. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Councillor Wright, and thank you to all the other elected members that attended Anzac Day services last week. And I just really would like to say a special thank you to Dawesville RSL and Mandurah RSL and all the volunteers, community groups, organisations that got involved, and from the Lions Club doing the gunfire breakfast to seeing the SES, the young people who slept there overnight. Like, it is pretty extraordinary to see thousands of people come together to recognise what such an important day in our calendar. So thank you so much to the elected members also that were involved. We now move to a very special part of the evening, which is our local legend announcement. And sitting in front of me, we have got some extraordinary young people and their mentors, and I cannot wait to announce that this month's Local Legend Award is to no other than our Mandurah Surf Lifesaving Club. And now I get the privilege to say a few things about the Mandurah Surf Lifesaving Club. We talk about what makes Mandurah such a special place, and it often comes back down to people who quietly step forward to look after others. And that is exactly what this club and its volunteers do day in and day out. Powered by an incredible team of committed volunteers, the club plays a vital role in keeping our beaches safe. Their lifeguards give their time so generously, patrolling our coastline, responding when help is needed, and providing care in conditions that are often challenging and unpredictable. It is work that takes skill, training, and courage, but above all, a deep sense of care for the community they serve. Tonight, I want to start by saying thank you to all your volunteers, to every single person who's been involved in your club over the previous decades. I know that you've recently celebrated your 30th birthday, so I just think that's a huge accomplishment in itself. Your impact definitely does reach beyond our shorelines, though. Through your education and training programs, pathways like Nippers, you really are shaping the next generation of community leaders and nurturers. You are giving young people confidence, teaching resilience, and helping them understand the importance of looking out for one another. These are all life lessons that not only build a person's character, but actually strengthen the fabric of what a strong community should look like. Beyond every patrol, every training session and every event are countless hours of dedication, early mornings and quiet work that really does sometimes go unseen. And it is that commitment that continues to make Mandurah safer and more connected. On behalf of the Council, thank you. Thank you for the care you show, the skills you share and the difference that you make every single day in Mandurah. It is an absolute honour to present you tonight with the April Local Legend Award. And now I get to give you the award. And if any of you would like to share a few words, obviously it's live streamed, so our community get to hear directly from you. So if you'd like to come forward and grab your certificate, and if you'd have someone that would like to share a few words with our community, you're more than welcome to do so. Don't rush.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Nothing prepared, but thank you for this award. These are the local legends, our future. They do such an amazing job for us on the beach. We go along because we enjoy it. We enjoy the lifestyle on the beach. Mandurah is a great place, and it's great to have such a good club and so many great members in it. Well done.
Congratulations. Like I said outside, you're more than welcome to leave now if you'd like to, or you can hang around for the rest of the meeting. Totally up to you, no pressure at all.
Well done, guys. Well done.
We now move into declarations of interest. Elected members and officers are now asked to declare any real or perceived interest they may have in respect of the reports listed for consideration at tonight's meeting. Should an elected member or officer declare an interest, I would remind them of the need to leave the chamber immediately prior to the item's discussion. CEO, have you received any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting?
No, Mayor.
We move into questions from elected members. We have received several questions from elected members. Which due notice has been given, which there are none, and then we have received some where there has, which no notice has been given, which there are several. Councillor Burns, would you like to ask your questions?
Thank you, Chair. WALGA provides a range of services, training and advocacy functions that the City of Mandurah engages with. To better understand the level of that engagement and the associated cost to ratepayers, I have a series of questions relating to the expenditure in the 2024 to 25 financial year. 1. What was the total amount paid by the City in membership fees to the West Australian Local Government Association, or WALGA? 2. What was the total amount spent on WALGA delivered training for both staff and elected members? Please distinguish between mandatory and non-mandatory training where applicable. 3. What was the total amount spent on WALGA events, forums and conferences attended by staff and elected members? 4. What additional services, subscriptions or programs does the City procure through WALGA, and what is the cost of each? 5. What was the total amount spent on memberships, training, events and conferences associated with Local Government Professionals Australia WA, local government professionals WA, for staff and elected members. For completeness, can the above WALGA and LG professionals WA expenditures be broken down by category? Membership, training, events, conferences, additional services, and by staff versus elected members where practicable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll refer those questions to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I will take those questions on notice.
Are there any other questions from elected members for tonight's meeting? Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through the chair, to the relevant officer. Just a question in relation to the noise levels of commercial businesses. I've had it raised with me and wish to clarify, is the city reviewing or looking at increasing the decibel levels from hospitality commercial outlets in Mandurah?
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. I'll refer that question to the Director of Strategy and Economic Development.
Thanks very much for the question. I'll just take that on notice.
Thank you. Subsequent question.
And I could have put it all into one. Thank you, through the chair.
No, you're welcome.
And are we aware if the state government themselves are reviewing noise levels from licensed premises?
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. I'll refer that to the question of Strategy and Economic Development.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks. I'll take that question on notice as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Chair. To the relevant officer or yourself, one of process or procedures, will the supplementary questions that will be provided by Mr Buckland, will they be minuted in the minutes of this meeting? And if not, could elected members be please provided with that response?
I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. It will not be included in the council meeting. However, we'll provide a copy for, obviously we'll write to Mr Buckland and provide a copy to elected members.
Thank you. Any other questions from elected members? As there is none, I'll move on to the next item, business left over from previous meeting. And there is none. Recommendations from committees, there is none. And we now move into reports. We will move into report 19.1, draft of the Mandurah Southern Beaches Coastal Hazard Risk Management Adaptation Plan endorsement. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Yeah, moved Councillor Cumberworth, and a seconder. Yeah, Councillor Wilkins. Councillor Cumberworth, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you. A very thorough community consultation and investigation has been conducted. It's a very lengthy report, and I have handpicked a couple of notes of the community consultation. One of the most agreeable options is that the city should undertake protection work and ask the state and federal government for help. And the most disagreeable option was to do nothing. So I think they're important takeaways from this very important document. And now that we have a better understanding of the future impacts of sea level rise and increasing storm activity, hopefully we can continue to preserve our beautiful coastline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cumberworth. Would the seconder like to add anything?
Pressing the wrong button, sorry. Thank you, Mayor, through you. I would also like to compliment the city on their consultation process. Been critical with community consultation in the past, and I thought the consultation with this and other items has been excellent, and happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the officer's recommendation? Yes, Councillor Mulder.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I cannot support the recommendations in the report in the absence of understanding the costs to execute those recommendations. So I'd like to demonstrate, one, these costs are very significant, and two, the report expects ratepayers to pick up much of that cost. So to quote, the potential financial and economic implications of adaptation options over the planning horizon are extensive, and funding is one of the most significant challenges of coastal hazard planning. Few local governments have the capacity to self-fund adaptation through general rates revenue. The cost for coastal management can be very high and grants are competitive across WA and through Commonwealth sources. End quote. A little further on we read, quote, the city should consider establishing a coastal management fund, and it goes on to suggest that we allocate, I quote, a percentage of the organisation's operating budget for coastal management, between 1% and 2% is suggested, end quote. So that in itself is already suggesting we increase rates to collect an additional $2 to $3 million per annum on an operating budget of about 170 million. And we are asked to acknowledge that, and again I quote, coastal management costs are forecast to increase. We are recommended to adopt some form of differentiated funding arrangement whereby some residents and businesses would pay more than others. Again, I quote, the cost of most adaptation options far exceeds the budgetary capacity of the city. In most cases, seeking support through grants would be limited to a contribution of 50% of the capital grant of an option. The remaining 50% is still considerable and maintenance would be considered separately. If all ratepayers agreed to substantial rate increases, the cost of the combined options in the Northern Beaches chart map, this chart map, and the forthcoming Estuary Peel Inlet chart map increase this financial challenge considerably. As such, BDA, benefit distribution analysis, begins to determine if certain parties stand to benefit more than others and should therefore contribute more to the response, reducing the financial implication for other ratepayers or taxpayers. So the report goes on to identify large costs for sections of our coastline, Halls Head, Falcon, Wannetup, where it concludes that a large percentage of the cost could be allocated to the owners or residents in those areas. When it comes to the recommended implementation plan, the report notes that, quote, the recommended implementation actions have been guided by the outcomes of the MCA multi-criteria analysis process. However, there are no costings included in that analysis, other than to categorise costs as either low, reasonable, moderate, high or very high. And the incomplete high-level costings, which do appear in one of the appendices, Appendix H, indicate multi-million-dollar costs, 10.5 million every 10 years, for beach sand nourishment at Blue Bay, as one example. So to summarise what is, I think, a very simple position, we're being asked to endorse this plan. The cost implications of this plan are very significant but are not defined. I cannot endorse this plan in the absence of costings of the recommended action plan, that is, without understanding the cost to ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. Is there any, can you just give some clarity on some of the statement that Councillor Mulder made there? Thank you, Director of Built Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor. So the plan, or the draft plan as it is at the moment, doesn't commit council or the city to any costs or incurring any costs. Other than, I guess, if it is endorsed tonight, the next step would be to develop a 10-year action plan, excuse my voice, that would actually then be presented back to council in due course. That would include both the priority actions and outline the costs associated with those actions. So at this stage, the document would guide, I guess, our forward planning and prioritisation around the creation of that action plan. The action plan itself would then actually talk about potentially the costs that may be incurred for particular actions. And at that point, I guess there would be a decision for council to make. Also, that would need to be reflected in the city's long-term financial plan and also adopted as part of future annual budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there anyone wishing to speak for, or are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. In looking through the report and also walking this journey a little bit as well, it's been some time actually, a lot of work's gone into this. I do find myself in a similar position to Councillor Mulder, really. I was thinking, this is fantastic, but gee, there's a lot to do here. Gee, this is going to cost a lot. And I was kind of wondering, maybe the CEO could or somebody could answer this in some respect. I
I know that we're just here at the moment saying, well, okay, this is all very, very good, and it's very aspirational in the sense that I don't see where the money is going to come from. But the action plan will force us to look at that, and that's the purpose of the action plan, I'm assuming. What I was wary of is this amazing plan that then gets put on the shelf because we can't do it, and we've spent so much time and energy doing this. At what point do we call it? Because we do need the money to do it, and I don't see that we've got that surplus money sitting around unless we stop doing some other things. Or have we got a fund that we've kind of put aside to do this?
Thank you so much, Councillor Jackson. Can I please refer that to the CEO?
I'm just going to summarise your question and ask the Director of Built and Natural Environment to also make comment around the state government and federal government grant requirements of having a chair map before funding is available. If you can also make comment on that to answer Councillor Jackson's questions around is a chair map required now, and we can use the Northern Beaches example of the action plan that's been approved and those key actions that have come out of that as a result of having a chair map.
Through the Mayor. So certainly, and I guess it's a path we have walked before, as mentioned with the Northern Beaches char map and the action plan that we're currently implementing. Effectively, by having a char map, which is a requirement of state planning policy, actually gives us then access to the grant fundings, both federal and state, that without the char map and the further work that needs to come from the char map in the form of the action plan, we would not have access to. So some of our key projects currently are obviously the Dotties Beach foreshore protection works, which we've discussed, and we've been successful in gaining funding through the char map for that work. It's assisted us in projects like the Town Beach seawall repair works, which has been funded by state government, and also around the advocacy project that we currently have underway for the mechanical sand bypassing process, and that's an advocacy project. So there's some projects that obviously we would progress, and that is particularly around reviewing our planning policies so that we protect both the city but also property owners around the future risks of development on the coast. But also there's decisions to be made around intervention and whether or not the city will intervene and provide sort of foreshore protection works going forward, and then effectively how they're funded. But they're all things that will come out of the further work that would be part of the action plan. Certainly the outcomes at the moment are relatively high level, looking at the priority areas for us over the next 10 years, of which we can focus those efforts. But importantly, by starting that work around the action plan and continuing in the southern beaches area, as we have already commenced in the northern beaches, it gives us a line of sight to what's required and then allows us to plan and then work through those potential solutions, access obviously state and federal government funding, and actually make decisions in terms of what the city will or won't invest around foreshore protection going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through the chair. Of the Dotties Beach and Town Beach, what is the cost of those works, and how much did we receive from state and federal funding?
Thank you. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, Town Beach seawall, I believe that the state government funding was in an order of $1 million for that work, and that's 100% funded through state government. The work to date that has been funded for Dotties includes the design, and again, I'll just perhaps refer to the Executive Manager Natural Environment, but my understanding is that was a significant contribution toward the design works, which will then allow us to apply for the actual construction works that will be required, again, subject to council approval.
So the feasibility study and the design work was funded 50% through the state. and we've just submitted the application to do the works on ground at 100% if we're successful.
Yeah, another question, Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through the chair. This interests me, it really does. It is when it comes to the erosion of our coastline, where does the ultimate legal responsibility or liability lie? Is it state? Is it federal? Is it local governments?
Thank you, Councillor Schumacher. I will refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, it really depends on, I guess, the management orders of the adjacent foreshore reserves, but in most cases, the foreshore reserves themselves are vested with the city, with management orders granted by the state. In terms of local planning, again, the private property that is adjacent to the coast falls under City of Mandurah planning responsibility. So I think there is definitely, through the funding streams, a recognition that there is a shared responsibility. But I guess from the city's perspective, we obviously have management of that land and responsibility around setting planning conditions and, to a degree, local planning law around the adjacent development. So I would suggest there is an obligation for us to consider and plan for what may come through the change that we're expecting.
Councillor Schumacher, another question.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So the question in relation to legal liability at the highest level has not actually been established.
I'll refer that to the CEO.
We will take that on notice. There has been some advice in relation to legal responsibilities and actions, and every situation is different. So we won't be able to give you generic advice, but we can provide some case law in relation to the situation, the matters that have been brought before the court. So we can do that, and we can also provide some information from our insurer in relation to our public liability obligations.
Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through the chair. And in relation to that information, can we also have comment? Can we get comment from the federal government as to what they believe their responsibility is? And we could say the same about the state as well.
I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. We will request a formal response from them. Yep.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members or anyone wishing to speak for the motion? Yeah. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you, through the chair. I just made a few notes while listening to the conversation. Living in the Southern Beaches area, I do see the effects of the sand and the movement. I feel that this is a very important document if we are wanting to be really strongly advocating for permanent mechanical sand bypassing. As the Director of Built and Natural Environment has articulated, this is a document we need to have to be moving forward in that space. And in response to Councillor Schumacher, from what I read, the Southern Beaches map, the document developed was in accordance with State Planning Policy 2.6, coastal planning, which is a requirement to have a coastal management authorities plan for coastal hazard risk management and adaptation. So I feel like this is something that we really are meant to be doing. So many of us reside, enjoy these spaces. I just don't really know what our alternative is, just to do nothing. That I'm not really happy to sit by and do nothing. I feel like the document is just a guide to managing coastal hazards, ensuring long-term sustainability. It does use comprehensive methodology to identify suitable adaptation options. They're just options at this point. We're not actually putting anything in place yet. They're suggestions, they are options. This is a draft. The actions do appear realistic in terms of the city's abilities to deliver. However, funding will be something that we need to look into further. It was endorsed by the Mandurah Heritage and Environmental Group and by the Youth Advisory Group. I just wanted to note that as well. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there anyone wishing to speak against? Yes, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Chair. I acknowledge the significant level of effort and dedication by the steering committee members, city staff and the consultant, Shape Urban. The community engagement process was, from my perspective, undertaken in a thorough, balanced and fair manner. There is a clear obligation on local governments to undertake a CHAR map. Coastal planning, monitoring and understanding risk is appropriate and necessary. There is value in this work, particularly the identification of assets, the monitoring framework and the intent to plan ahead rather than react. But where I struggle is not with the intent, it is how far this plan goes given the level of certainty we actually have. A key issue for me is the reliance on long-term modelling. The report itself makes clear that timeframes are not absolute, projections will evolve and future reviews may change the recommended pathways. Yet we are being asked to embed planning controls today based on projections extending 50 to 100 years into the future. These are not observations, they are modelled scenarios often built on conservative or worst-case assumptions. Long-range projections in complex systems like coastal processes can change as data improves. That doesn't mean we ignore them, but it does mean we should be cautious about how heavily we rely on them when making decisions that affect people today. The plan moves beyond identifying risk. It proposes, and the wording is recommends in the report, special control areas over large areas of land, effectively overriding existing zoning. They include prohibiting subdivision and higher density development, requiring approvals for work that would not ordinarily need approval, introducing time-limited development approvals, and placing notifications on property titles. These are not minor measures. They have real implications for property rights, land value, and how people can use the land they already own. Once adapted, this plan will not just sit on the shelf. It will become the basis for future planning decisions, scheme amendments, and policy settings. And frameworks like this are difficult to unwind, even if assumptions change over time. Importantly, the report makes it clear there is no obligation on government to compensate landowners for any loss associated with these risks. In practical terms, we're proposing additional planning controls that may restrict land use, reduce value, and signal long-term retreat based on projections decades into the future. If those projections change or impacts are less severe, there is no mechanism to restore the lost value or compensate those affected. So the risk is not shared evenly. The downside sits with individual landowners while decisions are being made today based on modelling that is acknowledged to be uncertain and evolving. If we get this wrong, the cost is not borne by government, it's borne by the people affected. We are also told this is a flexible trigger-based approach where decisions are meant to be made closer to the time as better information becomes available. But there is clear tension. If flexibility is the goal, then embedding rigid planning controls now before those triggers are reached runs counter to that principle. In my view, there's a more balanced path, one that supports continued monitoring, improved data collection, regular review and preparedness, but is more cautious about locking in long-term planning controls, imposing restrictions on land use and committing to financial and regulatory frameworks that may not ultimately be required. This is not about ignoring risk. It's about ensuring our response is proportionate to the level of certainty we actually have, and that we do not move from prudent planning into unnecessary overreach. For those reasons, I'm not in the position to support the plan in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for or any other questions from elected members? Yes, Councillor Jackson. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Councillor Knight, do you have a question? Councillor Jackson's got a question, then I'll refer to you, Councillor Knight.
Just wonder if I can get an officer comment on some of the points raised by Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, so I guess, again, repeating that from tonight there's no obligation on adoption of the CHAR map around creating any
Point of order.
change to the...
Councillor Burns?
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
I understand elected members reserve the right to ask questions of staff during the debate.
Yes.
I interpreted that and as a comment required from staff or requested from staff, which is effectively staff entering the debate, which I don't
No,
think...
I don't believe that's the case. Sorry, Councillor Burns, I don't accept your point of order. Continue on.
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So there's no obligation the Council places in regard to any decision in relation to a response based on the Southern Beaches Char Map tonight. The detailed work will commence with the development of the action plan, which in a lot of cases and based on the information that's provided in the Char Map will be around ongoing monitoring and consideration around future response and review. But certainly it will prioritise some consideration around actions such as planning and also further investigations and potential design. But without preempting, I guess, what will come back as part of the action plan, because that will take us 6 months to develop. But what I can assure is that there will be a decision-making process from Council around the action plan and adopting the action plan, with an understanding of any cost impacts, but in particular around anything coming out of the action plan. Obviously, there will be a decision-making process for Council. So should there be considerations of changes to local planning law, then effectively that is something that would be ultimately decided by Council at that time, similar to any investment in any other projects coming out of the action plan as well. So just reinforcing, no decision tonight. They're things that will come out of the further work and the further clarification that officers will provide coming out of the action plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Jackson? Councillor Knight, you also have a question?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. No, not a question. I just wanted to speak for the officer's recommendation, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, as I said, I do support the officer's recommendation. I think it's very, very clear that without the chair map, we would not be eligible for any funding to undertake protection work. We've been very successful in the other areas where we've got chair maps covering our coastline. And I think that for our community's sake, we need to ensure that we are eligible for that funding, because without that funding, I'm not sure how we would be able to afford to undertake the protection work that will be required. So I'm very much in support of this very extensive document. It's been a long time coming. It's had good public exposure. There's been a lot of input from a lot of people, and I'm very comfortable with the position that we're in. We aren't actually obligating ourselves tonight to any funding, though the action plan will come back to us at a later stage for Council to make a decision on how we wish to proceed with works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Is there anyone wishing to speak against or have any other questions before I move it to close by Councillor Cumberworth? As there's not, Councillor Cumberworth, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you. It is obvious that to protect our coastline with impending rising sea levels and increased storm activity will come at a phenomenal cost. But tens of millions of dollars pales in comparison to the capital value of our coastal properties, which would easily be $1 billion plus. On top of that, it's the confidence in our city. If we were to, unfortunately, as Councillor Burns identified, allow the sea to strip away our coastline and start to wash away our city, people may lose confidence in the city of Mandurah, and we would essentially stop to function as what a city is, which is a safe place for humans to reside. This chair map provides the guidance that we need to take coastal protection one step at a time, to prioritise projects one step at a time, and the city has already demonstrated an excellent approach to delivering coastal protection for our city. So I fully endorse the Southern Beaches chair map and encourage you to also. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cumberworth. I'll now put that to the vote. Anyone wishing to vote against the officer's recommendation? I declare that carried. We now move to report 19.2, adoption of the revised public art policy. The update of this policy aims to support local artists and creative opportunities to ensure public art reflects Mandurah's identity and sense of place and provide clear, consistent guidance for future projects. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Wilkins. Would you like to speak to the item, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through the Mayor. The public art policy adaptation of revised policy presents design. Please, may I start again? The report presents a revised public art policy designed to provide a clear and contemporary framework for the commissioning, delivery and ongoing stewardship of public art across the city. The policy has been developed through a comprehensive review process, ensuring a strong foundation for consistent decision-making, improved outcomes and enhanced community value. Adoption of the policy will support the delivery of high-quality public art that reflects local character, enriches our public places, provides enduring cultural and social benefits, attracts visitors to Mandurah and fosters local collective pride and identity. And I experience that pride firsthand every time my family visit the Mandurah skate park, when my son will tell anybody that will listen that he painted that big bird on the wall there. And I love to see that sense of pride with my son, and I'm sure it's with other children as well, who have helped paint community murals. The update from the originally endorsed 2014 policy better reflects current strategies and plans at a local, state and national level, and aligns with our city's art and culture strategy and our strategic community plan, and was also endorsed by the Youth Advisory Committee. For these reasons, I wish to endorse the officer's recommendation to adopt the advised art policy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. And Councillor Wilkins, would you like to speak as a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll probably repeat a few things that Deputy Mayor Smith said, but yeah, happy to support the adoption of the revised public art policy. In my opinion, public art is far more than decoration for our streets, parks and public spaces. It is a reflection of who we are as a community. It creates identity. It encourages connection and helps tell the story of our city. We are fortunate to have a rich, diverse and deeply talented creative community here in Mandurah, and public art provides an important platform to showcase that talent. This policy gives Council a clear and consistent framework to make considered decisions and ensure the public art across our city provides lasting cultural, social and economic value. And if we need proof of the value that bold and visionary public art can bring to a region, we don't have to look much further than the giants of Mandurah. It's become the most successful tourism, placemaking and community activation project our city has ever seen. And it's proof that when public art is done well, it enriches a space and activates underutilised spaces and support. And this policy will encourage supporting local creatives, which I think is really important as well. So this policy provides the framework to ensure those opportunities are approached in a structured, transparent and strategic way. And I'd just like to add that I thank the officers involved with the review of this policy and happy to endorse it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Are there any questions from elected members? Yes, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, through the Chair, to the relevant officer. What is our budgeted amount in the long-term financial plan for public artworks in the City of Mandurah?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, the City has a reserve fund which currently has $435,000 in it, and we contribute $90,000 per year to that reserve.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions from elected members? Oh, yes, Councillor Mulder.
Yeah, thank you, through the Chair. Just trying to understand whether this policy creates an implication or an expectation on developers to provide public art.
Great question. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. There is no statutory obligation by developers to contribute to public art. However, we do know that developers see the value in public art and will install and are wanting to engage with the city because it does add to their estate. And what this policy says is that we'll provide guidance to them when they come and request the ideas that they're thinking of when incorporating public art into their estate.
Subsequent question, Councillor Mulder.
Thank you for the answer. Just to clarify then, the city will never, under this policy, imply to a developer that they are expected to deliver public art.
I'll refer that to the CEO.
Through you, Mayor, we will never force anyone, and we don't have the statutory power to do that. There are some local governments that have incorporated public art into their planning framework, and that's future work that we will workshop with councillors to workshop whether that is something that council would be interested in. However, at the City of Mandurah, there is no planning obligation to contribute to public art.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Councillor Mulder. Another question, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Mulder through the chair. With regards to developers wanting to put up public artwork, does the city or will the city contribute in any way for that to happen?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll refer that to the CEO.
I might start, and if I have missed anything, the Director of Place and Community will respond as well. There is, as part of the developers coming to the city and advising that they would like to install public art or have ideas around their estates, that doesn't come with a City of Mandurah contribution. That would have to be a council decision to do that. In terms of maintenance, this policy provides that if there's any proposal, they would have to give us a maintenance plan, because once they hand over the maintenance period, over their development, it would be the City of Mandurah's obligation to maintain that. So we do have a budget for maintenance of public art and public furniture and also maintenance of buildings. So that would have to be incorporated into those budgets.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Shoemaker?
Absolutely, thank you.
No, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak against? Yes, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Chair. I want to acknowledge up front there are elements of this revised policy that are clearly an improvement on the current version. In particular, the move towards clearer definitions, stronger process and greater recognition of life cycle considerations is positive. Moving away from a more ad hoc approach, in principle, is a step in the right direction. But where my concern lies is not in what the policy includes, it's in what it does not clearly resolve. The policy requires life cycle costs to be identified, maintenance, repair, eventual decommissioning, but it does not explicitly state who is responsible for funding those costs prior to the city accepting the asset, and that matters. Because once the city accepts public art, it becomes a long-term obligation, an asset that must be maintained, managed and ultimately paid for by ratepayers. Identifying the cost is not the same as controlling the cost. I've not seen within the policy clear safeguards that ensure those costs are funded up front, whether through developer contributions requiring maintenance to be paid up front, bonds or defined maintenance periods. Without that, there is a real risk the city could knowingly accept assets where the long-term financial burden is transferred to the community. I also note the officer report makes a number of positive claims around public art in terms of identity, visitation, economic benefit and community value. These may well be valid, but they are presented as assumptions rather than supported by clear local evidence or measurable data. I think it's reasonable when we are making long-term financial commitments to ask how those claims are demonstrated and how success would ultimately be measured. I'm also cautious about the broader direction of the policy, particularly its more explicit extension into private development and the potential for this to evolve from setting standards into creating expectations. For me, there is an important distinction between ensuring that any asset the city inherits is appropriate and manageable and expanding the scope of public art more broadly. At its core, this comes down to responsible governance. If we are inheriting the asset, we must be clear about the liability. At this point, I'm not satisfied the policy provides that clarity or those protections. For those reasons, I won't be supporting the officer recommended public art policy in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Are there any questions from elected members or anybody wishing to speak for your question, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, 3 points that Councillor Burns has just raised. Can I have a comment about how we would be able to budget for the ongoing maintenance and decommissioning of public artwork paid for by the developer?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. In relation to a new subdivision, that requires maintenance of all parks, all roads, all public art. And with that, with the new subdivision also comes new rate revenue. So there is a factor that we apply in the long-term financial plan around the costs associated with a new subdivision and also the assets within those. So it would be included in that. In relation to decommissioning, there is some further work that the city has done and will need to do in relation to identifying when a asset is required to be decommissioned, and there would be funding set aside when required as part of the budget and the long-term financial plan when we identify that a public art work needs to be decommissioned, and that would be budgeted accordingly. So that is something council will consider for the decommissioning as part of the budget process. However, as part of the maintenance, the developer is required to provide us with a maintenance plan, and so is the professional artist as well. And then we would incorporate that into the maintenance of that estate.
Subsequent question, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, through the chair. How much has the city spent on maintenance of public art to date, or how much do we spend on an annual basis?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Thank you, through the Mayor. The city has recently gone through an exercise where every public artwork that we have has had a recent condition report undertaken. That has highlighted that we have sort of one set amount of about $125,000, which we sort of need to bring the condition up to speed. And then we're expecting around $62,000 a year for maintenance. But we would expect once we've got the maintenance schedule fine-tuned, that would significantly reduce. And it's worth adding that when the city undertakes its own commissions for public art, one of the key criteria that we would have in the evaluation would be looking at the materials that the artist is looking to use and whether they think they will be robust enough to last the lifetime of that public art asset and continue to bring us value. So you'll notice in the policy, in the decommissioning, one of the criteria that we have for decommissioning an artwork is if council considers the maintenance and repair is exceeding the value of the artwork.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Shoemaker? Yeah. Councillor Wright, question?
Through the Mayor, it probably could wait, but what's the value of the city's public artwork?
Thank you. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, I do have a figure, but I'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Wright? Any other questions from elected members in relation to this item or anyone wishing to speak for? If not, I will take it to Deputy Mayor to close.
Question.
Oh, yes, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, and excuse this is ad hoc. So, including myself, you could be drawn into the normal scenario where a developer does public art and the city might assume ownership of that at some stage. The definition of public art is also art that can be seen from the public and remains on private property. What statutory tools are in the city's chest that can enforce that public-facing art on private property that remains private property is maintained to the degree at which the city approved the art in the first place? So to paraphrase, it's fine to approve it and accept the maintenance schedule, but how do we enforce it?
Great question. Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Hopefully I can, I'm going to answer your question, and if I don't, you can maybe rephrase your question again. But in terms of a approval as part of a subdivision, if they have committed to installing a public artwork on private property, we would request, and you can request, a public art plan, and then they would have to be required to, if it's on private property, we potentially would have some obligations that they would have to maintain that to the plan. So there are, but if their public art is on private property and it's not a development, so then it stays with the landowner of that private property, there are conditions in relation to making sure the materials are from an exterior point of view in accordance with the building application. So there is a requirement that if that formed part of the building approval, that they would be required to adhere to those standards and the provisions they've included in their application. So we have some public art on private property, and we would work with the landowner to ensure that the maintenance is upheld, or we request a decommissioning as well. But really, it's from the building application, and unless there's any other statutory obligations from the directors. But my first thought is the
Director of Place and Community. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you, through the Mayor. Really just clarifying that it's not the intention of this policy for council or administration to have an approvals and compliance process for private public artworks. But I will add that at the moment, the officers, whilst the city might not have a compliance function, our arts officers do field multiple calls from private residences or businesses, and they will offer guidance around quality public artwork in line with the policy.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Burns, then Councillor Wright.
Supplementary, and it pertains to the CEO's comment. So I appreciate her feedback regarding new builds and building applications, that there may be some controls, but there is nothing that, by definitions or elsewhere in the policy, that talks about public art being put on existing buildings. So there are many more combinations or permutations that this policy doesn't really address. One of those, I'm just trying to frame it right. So, yeah, certainly.
I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So this doesn't cover other obligations and other statutory obligations that may be required by a landowner. So there may be, we wouldn't include that in this policy, but just like we have other policies that other legislation also may be applicable to a situation, this would be the same, where we would have to assess whether a application is required from a compliance point of view, but it certainly would draw on public art based on this policy, but also the statutory requirements can fall in through other legislation as well. So this policy provides guidance that it's possible to have public art on private property, which we hear from developers it does add value, and so from a private landowner as well that has a building or wants something of a statue or something of public art on their own private property, that this helps our staff guide them in what type of public art we would provide advice for. So there are other, and there could be other statutory obligations, but it shouldn't be addressed in this policy because they sit outside of this anyway.
Thank you, CEO. Another question, Councillor Burns.
So, circling back to my original question, you're confirming there is other legislation, or could be, but you can't advise me of that now.
I'll refer that to the CEO.
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Wright, question?
Through the chair, just looking at the policy, who's responsible for accountability against it with the public and with the developers? And I'll give an example. One of the guiding principles is a site's First Nations heritage and its cultural significance to First Nations people are considered from the initial planning phase through to project completion. If you're developing art on private land, is incumbent on you to be aware of this policy and know that that should be guiding your thoughts, or because it's dated?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, that would be out of the scope of this policy. This is for public art on land owned and managed by the city. So if it's a third party undertaking artwork, we would give advice that reflects this policy, but we couldn't mandate that.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Wright?
Just that the policy mentions on private sites are viewable from the public realm.
I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, the intention of including that in this policy is for officers to have guidance when they field the calls from private property or private business, that they would give advice consistent with this. So if we have a business in the city centre who calls the city officers and asks, I would like to do some public art, or put a mural on the side of our building, where do you suggest we start? We would sort of run through what's in this policy. If the city were creating its own public art, then that guiding principle would apply to the City of Mandurah.
And if I could just add to that, so it's a principle, it's not something that we can enforce on private property. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you. Through the chair, it's just raised another interesting question for me, or one that she can answer to. Where you had, let's say, a mural on the side of a commercial building, and that boundary line was the boundary line of city-owned land, where does that fit into the city's responsibility on maintenance?
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, I guess the intention of the policy is that whoever created the artwork, so if the city has negotiated using that wall with a private owner as part of our own public art strategy, and we feel that we would bring community value by using that wall, if the city were commissioning the artist and the artwork, it would be our responsibility. We would consider that if the business itself takes the initiative to put a mural on their own building, it would be the responsibility of that business owner or private owner.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Shoemaker?
No, provides concerns.
Okay. Councillor Burns, you have another question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm now somewhat confused. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard the Director state that the scope of this policy was not to include public art on private property. Then, correct me if I'm wrong, why is it included then in this policy if it's to be addressed in other documents outside of this policy?
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Can I ask for clarification on that? Yeah, through the CEO.
So I think the commentary by the Director of Place and Community was in relation to the principles about enforcing the policy and the principles on for public art on private property. That's the context that we can refer them to this policy. However, we can't enforce what they put on as a mural and then for them to follow the principles. So that's the context, I think, that the Director was taking that in. And it would be good, and the policy refers to it, is around having or ensuring there's a consistency with public art across the city, and that's really important, and that's what this policy provides, is to have a guiding principles, also having the criteria that we will ensure that the city follows as well, that is all consistent across the city, including private spaces, if possible.
Thank you, CEO. Any further questions from elected members before we close? Oh, Jenny, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, my question is, how is the art selected when it's proposed, or who approves it? Does it go through a panel, or does the person who is proposing to have the art put up on their private property, do they have the final say? Are there guidelines? Does it go through a panel? And then with that, how is it valued? Who places a value on that? How do we place a value on it? Is that just through materials, or is it through the name of the artist or time? How is that valued? And I'd just like to know how, because the way that it seems to me, what I'm listening to is that if an art proposal, somebody's putting up some art is proposed, that there does. I'm not sure how that goes through the selection, and the guidelines, and how it eventually does become part of our art issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I'll refer that to the Director of Place and Community.
Through the Mayor, I confirm that the City of Mandurah won't be in a position where we will be actively receiving proposals from private business or third parties. So this policy applies to public art that's City of Mandurah led. On our own public art, in terms of selection, we follow a procurement process for that. We have a panel, and depending on the artwork, that will be multiple people in different fields of expertise, depending on where the artwork is to be placed and the theme of that artwork. And we may involve an independent third party if we feel that would add value to the scoring matrix in getting the best artwork.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I will let Deputy Mayor close the debate.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Even though we weren't given a monetary value on our public art, I think it's fair to say that public art is a city asset, just like our sporting grounds and other facilities. The policy, along with ongoing development in the management of public art, will celebrate Mandurah's evolving community, foster tourism, enhance the surrounding environment, and reinforce the city's appeal as a beautiful and investment-ready destination. For this reason, I'd like to endorse the adopted revised public art policy as per attachment 1. Thank you.
I will now put that to a vote. Anyone wishing to vote against the officer's recommendation? I declare that carried. We now move to report 19.3, the local law review. The officer's recommendation is on the screen. Can I ask for a mover and a seconder for the officer's report? Councillor Wright as the mover, Councillor Cumberworth as the seconder. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak?
Through the chair, looking forward to having these laws go out for public consultation. I don't have anything else to say on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Cumberworth as the seconder.
Happy to support a review of local law. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Cumberworth. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the officer's recommendation? If there is no one wishing to speak against, are there any questions? Councillor Burns, you have a question?
Yeah, just seeking a comment on the... I thought I'd get in front of Councillor Wilkins on the public consultation. If the CEO could just briefly outline the process, whether we're guided by statutory requirements or whether we'll be, in a sense, exceeding those to meet public expectation.
Thank you so much, Councillor Burns. I will refer that to the Director of Business Services.
Thank you. Through the Chair. The City of Mandurah is required to comply with the Local Government Act in terms of the public notice process. So following Council's decision this evening, if it's approved, we'll go out through a local public notice. In addition, we also utilise all of our internal groups to seek additional advice. Where relevant, we will engage with commercial business operators, particularly with the jetty local law, who might be impacted by that particular law, and we'll identify any additional stakeholders where we're going to be engaging and seeking their individual comments. So we do go beyond the statutory requirements as part of our local law review. Additionally, we do seek extensive feedback and guidance from elected members when we're developing any amendments to local laws as well.
Thank you so much, Director. Any other questions from elected members? If there is no one wishing to speak against and there are no other questions, I'll put that to a vote. Anybody wishing to vote against? I declare that carried. We now move to item 19.4 report, monthly financial report for March 2026. Can I please invite the Director of Finance up, Manager of Finance. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the finance report for March 2026. As always, we'll start with a look at our operating graphs. Operating income sitting above budget and operating expenditure sitting below budget. We'd like to see them. Just a quick note on the operating income. You'll see an uptick in March. That was due to an accounting adjustment for profit on the sale of land. So that's why a little uptick on that. For a look at the capital graphs for non-operating income, you'll note a large uptick in March. As we start completing projects, we're starting to recognise revenue on our capital projects. So we do expect that to continue. And capital expenditure has started to trend upwards as well. We'd hope to see that going upwards towards the end of the financial year. For the interest trends, interest saved through the loan offset is around $128,000 year to date. Term deposit interest rates are attracting up to 4.9%, so that has increased over the last couple of months. A quick look at our rates receivable for March 2025, we were at 90.5% collected. March 26 we are 93.6% collected, so we have reversed the trend from the previous month. We are now back in front again, which is great to see. And for the rates collected on properties with a debt greater than $10,000, we are still sitting below where we were last year. Properties with a debt of $3,000 to $10,000, we are just above the line. However, noting that we are progressing through our interim rating schedules throughout this year, which will contribute to some of that. In the March report, we did have a number of budget variations that I'll take as read in the report. And we had no tenders for the month of March. Thank you.
Thank you to the Manager of Finance. Are there any questions from elected members? I'll first get, pardon, yeah, I'll get questions. Yeah, Councillor Mulder.
Just a quick question regarding the Baroy Linda Street. Is that where we're up?
Oh, sorry. I'll get a mover and a seconder first, and then we'll move to questions. Is there a mover? Councillor Cumberworth, and a seconder? Councillor Jackson. Awesome. Would you like to speak to the report?
Happy to move the monthly financial report as always. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Cumberworth, as the seconder. Thank you so much, Councillor Jackson. And now we'll move to questions. Councillor Mulder.
Thank you, through the chair. Given the doubling of the cost with that Baroy Linda Street intersection, my question that has arisen is, should that cause us to look at rethinking how we deal with that black spot in terms of alternate management options?
Thank you, Councillor Mulder. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, given the topography in that particular location and the nature of the serious accidents that have occurred, certainly city officers believe that a roundabout treatment is the best option for that site. Noting also that even with the additional costs that have been supported through the Black Spot program, so 2/3 funded through state government, effectively the benefit cost ratio still meets the criteria for Black Spot funding when compared to other similar accident projects across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions from yes, Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Chair. It's been some years since I was a very willing volunteer and active member of the Regional Road Group. I've got some questions to the relevant officer about the 2/3, 1/3 funding, and is it the ratio that's locked in, or do the city receive the funds up front? And the second part to that is, where is the then incentive to deliver this project under budget while still delivering the same scope?
Thank you, Councillor Burns. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
In relation to, through the Mayor, my apologies. In relation to the Black Spot project, it is certainly funded through the state, but administered through Regional Road Group, if you like, or main roads. In terms of the incentive around cost efficiency, obviously there is still 1/3% of the project that is, or 1/3 of the project that is funded through municipal funds. So certainly there is still some incentive to obviously deliver that in the most cost-effective way. I do note that there is a contingency that's allowed for as part of the project budget, and particularly around some uncertainty currently with pricing of asphalt and similar materials affected through the current supply, or I should say the supply issues that we have. So certainly we would be expecting the project would be delivered within budget, and certainly we will make every effort to ensure it's delivered in the most cost-effective way.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Burns, a further question?
Thank you, Chair. And just to clarify, and I guess it was my fault in the way that I asked the question, but so the ratios are the ones that's locked in, so any saving the city strives for and achieves doesn't come off our bill of 130, but from the total bill that we submit a refund for effectively for 2/3.
I'll refer that to the Director.
Through the Mayor, my apologies. Yes, the elected member is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members? Yes, Councillor Cumberworth.
Regarding the creditors' schedule of accounts, through the chair, page 2, the contractor being Urban Outlook Landscape Construction. I'm just inquiring to number 5085 and 5066. Ute Wet Hire Ranger. would like to ask what that is and what we get for that, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cumberworth. I'll refer that to the Director of Built and Natural Environment.
Through the Mayor, I'll need to take the question on notice to provide further details if necessary. But through that contract, ute wet hire would be for the utility vehicle plus an operator, so a driver of that vehicle. But in terms of any specifics around that expenditure, I would need to take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions and there are no electors wishing to speak against, I'll put that to a vote. Is there anyone wishing to vote against? If there's not, I declare that carried. We now move to motions of which notice has been given, and there are none. Notices of motion for consideration at the following meeting, there are none. Late and urgent business items, there are also none. Confidential items, there are none tonight. And I would just like to say thank you to those people that have stayed with us and are here in chamber. This now concludes the meeting. Thank you for your participation and support in assisting the meeting to run smoothly. I declare all business concluded and the close of meeting at 7:07 p.m. and request that live streaming be terminated.